This inflation is worse than you think it is. The government is using a rigged CPI calculation. In 2022, we experienced 8 to 9% inflation according to their calculations. However, there's this website called Shadow Stats, and it shows if we were to use the same calculations we did in the 80s, what would our inflation rate be in 2022? Instead of being 8 to 9%, it was 17 to 18%. That's a huge difference. Most people think it wasn't as bad as the 80s, but I think it was worse. Bruh. Because they changed the calculations. They changed how they measure it. The basket of goods, they take certain things out. The price of steak goes up. They say, okay, we're going to switch that for hamburgers because people aren't going to buy that anymore because it's too expensive. So they just change what's in the basket of goods. And they say, oh, this one's too volatile, or the quality improved. So, it's okay that the price went up. So they try to rig it. And you might be wondering, why would they have it rigged like that? That doesn't make any sense. I'll tell you why. When the government spends money, anything like the military, spending it on Social Security, Medicare, that money has to come from somewhere. And traditionally it comes from income taxes. They tax the U.S. citizens. That's normal. That's straightforward. People understand that. Another way, a sneaky way they tax you is with inflation. What? So what happens is the Federal Reserve, they just print money out of nowhere. They just print money and they buy government bonds. When you or I or anybody buys a government bond, we are lending money to the government. We expect a return with interest. When the Federal Reserve does it and they print money out of nowhere and buy the government bonds, they're just increasing the money supply. People tend to be confused about what causes inflation. If you're to Google it, look at this. More jobs and higher wages increase household incomes and lead to rise. So they say it's caused by rising wages or this cost price push. No, they're trying to make it confusing. It is very clear how it works. What causes inflation is when you increase the money supply. It's very clear. The government knows it. They've been doing this for a long time. If they're going to tax you, they're going to lower your buying power. If they're going to cause inflation, it lowers your buying power. They do this on purpose. They know what they're doing. That's why they rigged these numbers. They changed the calculations. Throughout the years, there were several changes. It's not right. And it becomes very clear when you look at this. Look how expensive homes are relative to wages, right? It is ridiculous. So hard to afford home prices nowadays. I don't even know. When we got off the gold standard, I think 1971, that's when things went south. See, this was a great time. I think your dollar went really far in this area. And then they got off the gold standard and you had a high inflation in the 70s and 80s. Home prices just started going up and up and up. It's even harder to afford houses than it was in the housing bubble. That is ridiculous. And here's one of the main culprits right here. 80% of all the US dollars in existence were printed in 22 months, from January 2020 to October 2021. That is pretty crazy. So it is really frustrating, actually, how nobody really pays that much attention to it. It's like, yeah, we're aiming for 2%. You want the prices to come down. You don't want inflation. You don't even want 2%. If anything, you want deflation. Now, lately, the inflation rate has been coming down, okay? But that doesn't mean prices are coming down. The net prices, so we had 8%, now we're at like 4, maybe getting close to 3%. The rate at which the prices are increasing is slowing, okay? That doesn't mean prices are going down. It's still very hard to afford things today. Try to buy a house, pay for rent. It's very, very difficult. Through innovation and capitalism, prices tend to fall. Like, think of buying a TV, for example. a few decades ago, I think it was kind of hard to afford a TV. Nowadays, very easy, and that's through innovation and capitalism. So prices tend to fall, and that's great. Then you can buy more things. But let's say prices were to go down 5% and the government printed money, so prices went back up that 5%, and where prices stay the same, you don't necessarily feel it, but that they just took something away from you. They took away those reduced prices. Now that you're back to square one, but they don't just bring it back to zero. They inflate it farther than that. So things just get expensive, and it's not just 8%. It's more like 17 or 18% where we just saw. Now it's slowing down, but it's still very expensive. We've got a ton of debt, 33 trillion, right? And the interest on that debt we're paying is right here, 675 billion. And then income tax revenue that the government is receiving is 2.3 trillion. That's a lot of money. But in a few years, it's projected in 2027, the amount we're spending on the interest on our debt will surpass the amount we're receiving from income taxes. Now, that just doesn't make a lot of sense. Like this, all this inflation is just ridiculous. It's just taking away your buying power. You were maybe mad about paying taxes, but this inflation, it is a tax, but it's the worst form of tax. Instead of the rich paying a higher tax rate, the poor do, because the rich people, they own assets, they own stocks and real estate. And when inflation happens, asset prices go up, and the poor people, their cost of living goes up. You try to buy things at the grocery store, it's expensive. You pay for gas, rent, it's very expensive. It's so frustrating, really. I don't know how this is happening. It's not going to end well if we continue this money printing. If we continue doing something like this, printing trillions and trillions of dollars, you might think that's okay. Let's say the government deposited $1 million into everybody's bank accounts. You might think, hooray, that's amazing, right? You have $1 million. But I'm telling you, it probably wouldn't be that great, okay? Because once it hits everybody's bank accounts, just a regular Toyota car is going to cost, say, $350,000 or more, or something. A gallon of milk, it costs $80. When you increase the money supply, inflation happens. It is not good. It is frustrating. It is just diminishing your buying power. If you save money, your dollars become worth less. It is so annoying. It makes me want to throw a burrito at a TV screen. I don't know. It's so frustrating. Just, man, I don't know what to tell you. We need to stop printing money. We need to go back on the gold standard somehow. I don't know. But this inflation is not good.